All right, so we are live. It is a career strategy session. Very special one today. I'm going to be giving you all the backstory of how I self-published the Amazon bestseller, Navigating a Career Jungle, A Guide for Young Professionals. It's this book right here. I have a very special guest, my friend Sade DK. She's going to tell you a little bit about herself, and then we're going to get into the Q&A.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sade DK. I am a motivational speaker and aspiring author. I've been working with Ms. Twillie for a few months now towards my own book, which will be titled The Rubric. It'll be a motivational how-to about the transition from high school to college, how to make it successful, and full of anecdotes about my own experiences and how they translate well into what a success story really could look like if you apply the tools. Jackie has been huge in helping me with the steps. This is my first book, and today we're just gonna do some Q&A about more things that I would like to know, so that way I can avoid as many mistakes as possible. So thank you for the time, Jackie. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for jumping on, and anything I can do to help you so you can learn from my mistakes and be 10 times better all for it.
Yes.
So let's hop into the Q&A.
Okay, so just my first question, which is pretty general. How long did it take you to write the book? Is this your first book, Navigating the Career Jungle? And how long did it take?
Navigating the Career Jungle is my very first book. It took me about 6.5 months. It was never a childhood dream to write a book. I just decided one week that I was going to write a book, and the next week I started writing, and 6 months later it was off at the editor. So,
wow, that's pretty fast. What would you say the steps were while you were in the writing process, publishing, marketing? Did you do it all simultaneously, or did you focus on writing first and dealing with the marketing and who was going to publish it later? Like, what steps did you take?
So the steps that I took when I decided that I was going to write the book, I actually mentioned to my boyfriend, hey, I'm going to write a book. And he's like, okay. So the next weekend, I sent him a book proposal, which is pretty much an outline. It wasn't a traditional book proposal. A traditional book proposal, if you're working with a publishing company, it's going to be about 70 or 80 pages. Mine was only 12 pages, but it was my rough sketch of who my target audience was, why my book was going to be different from anybody else's book, what made me qualified to write the book, and then the topics that I would cover, and an outline of the chapters that I wanted to include in the book, as well as the title. So I had a couple of bullet points under each chapter of what I would cover in the book. That was the outline that really that I used to get started.
All right.
So the other part of the question about how did I decide who was going to publish, I did all of this simultaneously. So as I'm writing the book, I was also researching publishers, and I was also researching editors. I educated myself via Google. So I worked in sales before. I knew that if I filled out a form online, I would get someone calling me back with a sales pitch when I anticipated those calls. So when the call would come in, I had my notebook with my list of questions. I would ask the salesperson my questions, and then I would ask them, you know, tell me something that I should ask that I don't know about the self-publishing process or the book publishing process. At this point, I was very focused on self-publishing and using a company to help me self-publish. So at the end of maybe 10 calls, I felt knowledgeable enough. I could anticipate what the people on the other side of the phone were going to tell me, and I felt like I could have an educated conversation about what goes on and what I should expect with self-publishing. And during the same time, I was also consulting with an attorney who I paid a flat rate hourly fee to, just to get some general information of what I should expect with a book deal. Self-publishing.
So what's the difference between self-publishing and traditional publishing?
So with traditional publishing, they pretty much do everything with you. You bring them the concept, you have a book agent, the book agent pitches the publishing house, and the publishing house will go in, they'll look at your book, they'll go in, rip it apart, tell you how to make it better, maybe tell you to change the title, change the content, and they'll work with you with the editor. So they're very hands-on. They've done this 1,000 times. They know the formula for success. Whereas with self-publishing, you're doing all of this on your own. You're picking your own book cover. You are picking your own editor. There's nobody that's going to go through and rip the book apart and say, take this out, put this part in. That's all on you with the self-publishing process. Now, the perk of the self-publishing process is you can get it done in 6 months like I did. When you work with a traditional publisher, sometimes it takes years to get the book deal and then years to write the book. And you'll turn your book in pieces to them, like this is the first section, the second section, and things like that. So with me, it was just every day I had a goal and I would go in and I would just write.
Okay, so it seems like the self-publishing, I get to have more control over it, and I don't have as many opinions involved in getting the process done, and I don't have to wait for them. So would you recommend self-publishing, or would you recommend traditional publishing in lieu of those pros and cons?
I mean, there are pros and cons to each. I guess you need to really figure out what your long-term goals are. My goal writing this book, I knew very early on, I wanted to be an Amazon bestseller. The next book that I write, I want it to be a New York Times bestseller. So the next book that I write, I am definitely going to work with a book agent and pitch my book. So I'm sure I'll have a totally different experience working with a traditional publisher. Having said that, I have not worked with a traditional publisher before, so I don't know all of the pros and cons. I just know general knowledge from my research, and I knew for my first book, I wanted to get it out within 6 or 7 months, so I knew self-publishing was the way to go to get that done.
So is it cheaper to self-publish than to go through a traditional publisher, and what's the cost for what you do know about self-publishing?
So, of course, you get paid when you work with a traditional publisher, and what you get paid can range. I mean, people have really large book deals and small deals. With self-publishing, you put up all of the upfront costs. So I used a self-publishing company to publish my book, and I had to pay them a flat rate for their services. So I got a host of services from them. They did the formatting for my book, paperback, hardback, and ebook format. They also got the ISBN numbers for the 3 different versions of the book. They also submitted my book to the Library of Congress of Control. They also submitted for the copyright on my behalf. So I paid them for those services. Now, there's a contract that you sign, which is why I consulted with an attorney, because you get a percentage of the book sales that you sell through a distribution channel online, whether it's Apple, iBooks, or Amazon, or Barnes & Noble, things like that. That's something that you have to work out with the company that you select if you choose to self-publish.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was good information. So now that I'm writing my book, a big thing that was a holding stage for me before I really began to write was figuring out what the title was going to be. I was in limbo of, do I write before I know the title? Do I write after I know the title? What did you do? Did you already know the title of your book before you start writing it? Did it shape how you went in the book, or did you just kind of write and let the title find itself in the pages?
So when I was writing the book proposal, I came up with a proposed title, hoping or anticipating that I would change it, but the title stuck with me. My proposed title, Navigating the Career Jungle, A Guide for Young Professionals. As I wrote the book, the more I wrote the book, the more the title made sense, that it was appropriate for what I was doing. But I thought when I started this process that at some point in writing the book, the title would change, but it didn't.
Okay. So I also got the title right before I start writing. The title really helped me know how I wanted to section off the chapters and everything. But when I write poetry or I write speeches, sometimes I just let the title find itself in the pages. So I think everybody's probably going to do it differently, but thank you for that feedback. I know when you were talking about the process of getting it to the publisher, how long does that process look? If I finish my manuscript, being essentially the rough draft of the book, and I'm sending it over to the editor, and what does that process look like? Like, how long does it take an editor to edit the book, and then a publisher to do the publishing?
So
what does that timeline look like?
So for me, the same process that I went through selecting a self-publishing company, I also went through with an editor. So I found a list of editors online, and I pretty much would put my information in for them to call me back. When they called me back, I had questions for them. And I ultimately selected Bubble Cow based out of the UK to edit my book because they have 25 Amazon bestsellers under their belt that they had edited. And because I knew that was my goal, I selected that company. So what I did was I sent Bubble Cow my draft. A month later, I got the book back from them. I paid up front. I also negotiated my rate with them. So I negotiated the entire process. And that's something that I think every self-publishing author should do. Even when I work with a traditional publisher, of course, I'm going to negotiate, my rates with them, even though I don't really know that process yet. I know that I negotiate, so that's something I'm going to do. But from that point, when I got the final copy back from the editor and I sent it to the company who self-published my book that helped me with that process, it was really a matter of about 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. So it was a pretty fast turnaround.
It was. And I have to pause for a quick second and grab my MacBook charger because I just got the reminder that my battery is low. Sorry, I forgot to charge it before we started.
Okay.
So I'll be right back.
Okay. Brief commercial.
So this is what happens when we record live. This isn't scripted, folks. This is real life.
Not scripted at all. So my next question is about the editor. When you talked about if someone went with the traditional publisher, how they would take away things, add things, rearrange things. Will the editor, if I decide to self-publish, will they rearrange things and say maybe this needs to be here, or is it strictly grammar editing that they do?
So that's a really good question. There are different packages for editing. So when you start the process to select the editor for your book, you can select someone to help you with grammar only or someone to help you with content as well. And the price for your editing services will be based on the type of package that you select. So you can select someone to go in and help you with the content, or maybe say, hey, rearrange this, move this to this section, et cetera, et cetera. So as you're looking at editors, based on your needs and what you want the editor to do, you can definitely select that package.
So what package did you choose that you think would be equally successful for our viewers today?
So, I mean, again, it depends on your writing style. I'm not a trained writer. I do have an MBA, I have a master's degree, but it's in business, it's not in writing. So if you're an English major, you might not need as much editing as I needed. So based on your own writing level, you know what type of help you need. Be honest with yourself. Don't say, I'm a better writer than I am. And if you want, when you're talking to editors, you can ask them. Most of them will allow you to submit a certain number of pages to them or words to them. That's another thing. When I was writing my book, I was focused on, I need to have, 3 pages written a day. But as I got further into the process, I learned that I really should be focusing on my word count for the day. So when you get your pricing for the editing of your book, it's going to be based on the words that you have, not the pages that you have. So again, with editing and selecting the style editing that you want, you can submit so many words to them, maybe like 6,000 or 10,000 words, and you can ask their professional opinion. Based on these 10,000 words, Do you think I need grammar editing, or do you think I need content editing? And they'll be able to tell you what's going to be best for you.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. So I know you mentioned you focus on word count. And that's one thing that I did not focus on going into the book, didn't even consider it. It was always chapters and pages. How would you say I can continuously write without feeling like I'm at a roadblock, but stay on track with my timeline for when I want to be done with the book?
Yeah, so initially I thought my book would be 20,000 words, which at the time I thought was a lot, but at the end of it, I was right at 50,000 words. So I would say there's different tools that you can use online. If you have a certain page count goal, there's different websites. I don't remember off the top of my head, but you can Google word count to page converter, and it'll tell you, you know, estimated about how many words you should be writing a day to hit your target. But yeah, whatever your word count goal is, I would just say be committed to it. As far as like getting stuck and in a block, sometimes I would push myself to write, but at other times I would be really inspired. So I had multiple notebooks around. I had my computer that I would type most of the book on. I used Evernote. Evernote is like a really cool app where if I was at a restaurant and I had an idea for the book, I would go ahead and jot my idea down. Sometimes I would text, use the text feature in Evernote to speak, to convert to text for parts of the book. I had a notebook next to my bed. I had a notebook in my car. I had a notebook in my purse. So anytime I had an idea, I could capture those thoughts. That kind of kept me going and gave me lots to write about. So I could go back later and elaborate and add to. And I found inspiration from many places. You know, I didn't say I can only write at this time. If I woke up in the middle of the night and I had an idea, I didn't go back to sleep. I got up and I would write.
Okay. So it seems like, I know you told me to try to focus on about 250 words a day with the book that I'm writing. Is there a formula that somebody can follow? I know you said that there's a converter for word count to page count, but maybe let's say your timeline is 6 months like yours was, and word count is 50,000 words. Are you dividing that by however many days are in 6 months, which is 180 days? So 50,000 divided by 180, is that where you're getting your per day number for words to focus on?
Yeah, you can get it from that. You know, you want to be realistic with yourself, and you also want to stretch yourself. So, you know, push yourself to do a little bit more. On those days, some days I will probably bang out like 600, 700 words in a day, which is a lot when you're writing every day. And then other days I could only get like a good 100 words out. I didn't put too much pressure on myself, but I knew at the end of the week, if I didn't have the goal that I needed at the end of the week, then I would have to really, you know, have a moment with myself where I'm like, all right, get it together if you really want to have this done in 6 months.
Okay.
And then I'll add to that, you know, you don't want to just add words just to have fluff.
Yeah,
it has to have context, which is why I had so many notebooks around so I could capture those ideas and make sure that my book wasn't a bunch of, oh, she said that 5 different times and, you know, 10 different ways. So you want to be aware of that as well. Make sure that what you're writing definitely has a purpose in the book and you're not just putting words on there just to hit a certain word count.
Now, I have a writing background, and the way I write is I always go back to what I previously wrote before I continue on. But I find that when I do that, I feel like I'm not getting as much done because I'm so focused on editing what I wrote before that now I've wasted that time doing that instead of just writing. But that's a limbo I'm at right now. Is there a way that you would recommend me to break through this current hurdle that I'm dealing with on wanting to proofread and be inspired by what was previously written in order to move on? Is there a way that I could be efficient but still make sure that what I'm writing is relevant?
Yeah, that's another really good question. What I would say is go ahead and write. Get everything out. You can go back and edit and add and pull apart and change it later, but don't stop your flow. Don't go back. Maybe some days if you're having a moment where you're blocked and and you don't have that content to pour out into the book, maybe that's the time you can go back and read, do a little bit of editing, but don't get so caught up that you have to edit what you've previously written that you can't move forward. But I would suggest go ahead, throw out your first draft, and get that out, and then rip it apart. There's one guy who just published a book a few months ago, The Art of Work. His name is Jeff Goins, Goins. And after he finished his book, he threw the whole book away and started all over again because it wasn't what he wanted. Now that's some serious commitment. You know his book is good.
He must be doing it full time.
Yeah, he has other things going on. He has a full family, so it's not like he didn't have anything else going on, but he was that committed to really, producing a really awesome book. But with that, I would say go ahead, write your first draft, and then go back and edit. If you have to take out a whole chapter later, it's fine. But go ahead and write everything, get it all out.
Okay, and I'm going to take that tip. I like the idea of just get it out, but go back when I'm not feeling so creative and just go in for maybe the grammar or the proofread. All right, thank you. On average, how many chapters would you say a book should have? Is there, I know we talked about word count, but is there a good amount that is consistent when people write books that I should focus on?
I would say no. I have over 100 books in my personal library, probably closer to 200 books in my personal library. Some of them are really thick, some of them are really small. The goal should be that at the end of the book, when somebody finishes your book, they come away with the message that you wanted to share with them. So it doesn't have to be, 15 chapters. If you can accomplish that goal in 3 chapters, that's fine. But you want your book to be impactful, and you want people to walk away feeling some type of way about the book. So of course my book is about career advice. You're a motivational speaker and you also write poetry, so you might have a different goal than my book. My book, the goal was simply to give young professionals the concepts and tools that they needed to successfully navigate the career jungle, and also give them some actionable tips to have realistic expectations. So I accomplished that in 10 chapters with my book. But the next book that I write, maybe I'll have 20 chapters. I don't know yet because I'm still, working on the book proposal. But don't get so caught up that you need so many chapters. Focus on the content that you're going to deliver, and making sure that when you think about the audience that you're targeting that's going to read your book, when they finish reading your book, you want them to say, this was well worth my time. I could take this information and I can go apply it to my life.
Well, I like that advice because it helps me not waste my time to ultimately waste someone else's. It's all about getting my message across. And I think that that's something really powerful that I haven't held true to and thinking about, but now it'll allow me to be more concise and get to the message without unnecessary fluff that my audience might not even care that much about. Okay. Footnotes. I have been including footnotes in my book right now. Not a lot, but I want to make sure that I don't assume with my audience, use an assuming tone with certain things. Do you think it's appropriate to do footnotes in a how-to book, or is that something that isn't really seen that often?
So again, I love your questions, which is why I'm so glad that you and I did this together. I think footnotes are great. And the thing about self-publishing is you set the rules. Nobody is setting the rules for you. And that's how you really set yourself apart from other authors and set your book apart to be a bestseller, is by creating your own rules. So you've been focusing on footnotes. You don't want to make any assumptions about your audience. You're telling them exactly, giving them references to refer back to. And I think that's great. That's going to make your book unique. One thing that is great about the self-publishing process is you don't have to put yourself in a box. You can be really unique, and your book can speak the way you would inspire your audience. So I would say if you've already started putting footnotes in there, keep doing it. That's going to make your book that much better.
All right. Well, thank you. So, really do it to, and I know that that's something on a larger scale. What would you say are some startup tips to really market in a smaller location, more locally, to get the book out to people, and it not necessarily being a book tour, but what are some marketing tips that you would have for me or our audience on getting their book out to the public?
So yeah, what I did as far as marketing the book was, again, just like I researched the self-publishing process, just like I researched editors, I also researched marketing of books. So I created this document, which I've already shared with you, that I put on Trello, a process to promote the book. And if anybody is listening online, if you want to see that document, I'll add you to it on Trello. Just shoot me an email, jvtwilley@jacquelinetwilley.com, and I'll add you to that document so that you can take a look at it. But pretty much what I did was I knew that I needed to let people know in advance that I was writing a book without being, too salesy or anything like that. So I shifted my focus on social media, which I already had a pretty large following on social, but I started sharing more career advice. The things that would be in my book are some of the things that I would share on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, just giving people nuggets of what the book was going to be like. I would even at times take a section of the book and throw it up on my Facebook page and say, hey, what do you all think about this? Just to know if it would really connect with my audience. So that were some of the things that I did for marketing. The other thing was I started building my email list so that when the book came out, I could share with people that I was building, that I had written a book. So to build my email list, I watched some webinars on how to build an email list. And I also, just took some extra time to learn how to successfully set that up, different platforms to use. I use MailChimp. It's been really beneficial for me, but there's tons of services out there. You just have to find what is best for you. So that's one of the other things that I did. Beyond that, I paid special attention to my book cover. So there was a standard package available for the book cover, but I wanted my book to be really unique. I wanted people to look at my book and instantly say, that's navigating the career jungle. So I worked with a really awesome artist on Fiverr to come up with my book cover. That's Fiverr.com. Yeah, I love Fiverr. I was really happy with the cover. So that was an important aspect of marketing the book. Another thing that I did was I created a book trailer. Just like when there's a new movie coming out and there's a movie trailer, I used Fiverr again, and I had someone create a book trailer for me. And I put that out a lot right before the book came out so that people could learn about the book and what it was going to be in. People consume information in different ways. Yeah,
wow. So what can people find? Is your book trailer still up? Is there somewhere where I can find it and how to find it?
The book trailer is still up on my YouTube channel. I actually, as preparing for this, I went to see to make sure that it was still up, and more people have watched it since the last time I checked it. So that's just another way for people to find me and find out about the book through the book trailer. And the book trailer was, I think, no more than 30 seconds. So it was a really effective way to tell people about the book. In addition to that, I set up a page on Amazon, an author page where the book trailer was there as well. A part of marketing the book, I also invested in professional headshots so that I could send my picture out with different groups to let them know I have written a book. So that was another part of it. And then overall, once the book came out, I told everybody I knew about the book. I bought Facebook ads and I ran ads to let people know the book was out. I sent an email to everyone on my personal email list and I asked them to support me. I let them know that the book was coming out. And I also pre-sold books in advance of the book coming out. The people who bought the books in advance, they got lots of perks. So they got a bookmark that came with the book. I had some ebooks that I gave away as part of the promotion, which was included in my package from the publishing company that I used to self-publish. So I shared some of those things when I would go out on speaking engagements. I would give some to the audience as a way to introduce people to the book. And I also, when people would reach out to me and say, oh, I really like the book, it was great, I asked them for a review. Reviews are golden when it comes to ranking on Amazon. So every time somebody sent me a message, or whether it was a text message or email, left a voicemail, a comment on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and they said, I really like the book, then I would just point them to Amazon and say, hey, can you leave me a review, which helped me consistently stay on the bestseller list for, I think, like 4 months in my category on Amazon, which brings me to another point. Once you set up your page on Amazon, you can select the categories for your book, which is super important for a self-publishing author. You want to make sure that your book is in the proper categories so that, you know, folks can find it. Instead of just being out there in a closet of 10 billion books, you want to make sure that it's right in the area that you need to be in. So that's another thing that you should do as far as marketing your book, is to make sure it's in the right categories. And that's not just on Amazon, that's on Barnes & Noble as well. That's on the Google Play Store. That's in the Apple iTunes bookstore. You have to be in the right category so that people can find your book if they don't know about you, but they know they want help with that area.
So that actually leads me to my next question. I hear you bringing up Apple Books and all these other channels. What are the channels that I can promote my book through? And the publishing company that I'm working with, are they the ones who position me to get onto those channels? Or do I need to reach out to them on my own to try to be put as one of their e-authors?
So great, another great question. As you're interviewing the company that you'll use to self-publish your book, you'll want to look at the partnerships that they have. Who do they have existing relationships with? And what's the distribution channels they can get you on? For me, one of the questions that I asked the publishing companies that I was talking to is, who do you have distribution with? Can you get me on Amazon? Can you get me on Barnes & Noble? Can I be in the iBookstore as well? And some of them couldn't, some of them could. I ultimately went with the company who could get me in all the places that I wanted to be in. But yes, that is something that you should do. Now, there is another type of self-publishing where you don't use a self-publishing company. I think Amazon does have a platform. Apple iBooks has a platform where you can write your own book and upload it that way and sell it. And with that, I'm not as familiar with their distribution channels, but my assumption is you would be doing more of the legwork, which was, for me, one of the reasons why I chose to use a company to help me self-publish, somebody who had these relationships already established, and I could just write the book and bypass the traditional process, but still have help along the way.
Now, you mentioned that you were you put yourself in a special category on Amazon, so that way people can find you easier when they just do maybe a wide search about books about careers. Seeing that you're not placing yourself into Apple iBooks or Barnes & Nobles, etc., is the publishing company putting you in a category when they position you onto those channels? Is it cliche? Do you tell them what category you want to put in? Or once they put you onto the channel, now do you have a sign in and you can go in and edit your own profile? You know, what does that process look like?
Another really, really good question. So yes, you tell upfront, I told the company that I was working with which category to put my book in. But beyond that, once I was up on Amazon, because I had an account with Amazon, an author page, I went in and I edited my categories and made it more narrow instead of being so general. Now with Apple, I could not, there's not a feature for you to go in and change your category after, you know, it's submitted to them. So the category that I submitted to the company who helped me self-publish, they passed that message along to Apple. For Barnes & Noble, I contacted Barnes & Noble directly and I told them, hey, I am in this category, but I need you to put me in this specialized category just to narrow it down a little bit more so that young professionals who are looking for career advice could specifically find my book.
Okay. And tell me and the audience again which channels you're presently on, just so if we're not aware of all potential channels to put our book, where are the channels that we should focus on?
Yeah, so my book is on Amazon in 3 formats. It's hardback, paperback, and e-back, and it will soon be on Amazon in audiobook format as well. So if you're thinking of recording an audiobook, it's acx.com, and that's a division of Amazon Audio or audible.com. It'll give you all of the guidelines that you need to record an audiobook. My book is also in the Apple iBookstore. It's also in the Google Play Store, and it's on barnesandnoble.com, which is bn.com. It's also on booksamillion.com.
Okay. All right. And before we wrap up, is there any advice that you would give a first-time writer based on some mistakes that you made, or just something that you've learned in the process of writing your first book that can help them really be a success?
Yeah, so my advice to a first-time author, the first thing is do your research. If you have a question about anything, go to Google. Google was one of my really good friends in this process. So I went to Google and I would research anything I needed to know. If it was something I couldn't find online, I would pop my information into a website so that I could get a sales call. And from that, I would ask questions to a live person. Beyond that, I would say stay focused and don't get deterred. One of the things I did, I was working full time at the time that I was writing my book. So I adjusted my work schedule so that I could have more time in the evening to write the book. I cut out going to dinner with friends. I cut out going to special events, and I was really focused for those 6 months working on the book. I did take a really awesome vacation internationally, but while I was on my vacation, I was still disciplined, and I wrote with that book every evening. So I would say to you, be disciplined about the process and don't be distracted. Another thing is, I didn't tell everybody I was writing a book, and I try to make sure I surround myself with people who are only going to lift me higher and push me to the highest and grandest version of myself. But because this wasn't a lifelong goal of mine, I did not tell everybody I was writing a book. I told a few people, my boyfriend, Brian, who the book is dedicated to, of course, he knew. My mom knew, a couple of my really close friends who supported me and encouraged me along the way. But I remember very early on in the process, I was having brunch with someone and I said, hey, I'm writing a book. And she's like, you're writing a book? And I felt discouraged at that moment, but I also recognized that I cannot tell everybody I'm writing a book because everybody won't believe in me and support me. So yes, it's exciting that you're writing a book and you want to tell select people, but don't tell everybody, because some people will discourage you, and not because they have any bad intentions. It's just because, you know, maybe they never seen that for you, or they never thought about writing a book. So you just want to make sure that you surround yourself with people who are only going to lift you higher, which is an Oprah quote that I really resonate with. And then the last thing about writing the book is, one thing I wish I would have done that I didn't do is two things. One, focus on the word count and not the pages. And two, I wish I would have had more people read the book before I published it, because I got some really good feedback after the book. Hey, next version, you should add this and add that. So the next time I write a book, I'm definitely, because I'm using a traditional publishing company, next time I'll have that. But if I self-publish again, I'm going to send an advanced copy to 2 or 3 people, or maybe 10 people, I don't know, but just to get some feedback on it, some people who are very close to me and I trust to give me honest, great feedback to make the book a little bit better. So those are things that I'm going to do moving forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you for this information, Jackie. You know, you have been a wealth of knowledge to me in this process, and I really appreciate it. I look forward to having more Q&A about the success story once I get this thing done. I'm in chapter 3 right now, but now I need to not focus on the chapter and focus on the word count. So thank you, Ms. Twilley, and I look forward to doing some work with you soon.
My pleasure. So to the folks who are joining us via Periscope, I'm about to sign off. Thank you all for joining me. If you enjoyed this scope, leave some hearts so I know if you want more behind the scenes like this. And to the folks who are joining us live on Google Hangout, thanks for joining us. If you have any questions, send me an email to jbtwilley@jacquelinetwilley.com.
And if anyone wants to reach me, you can reach me at sade.dk@gmail.com.